Hi everyone, Walter here. Welcome back. In this plane talk, I thought perhaps we should take it back to the beginning and talk a little bit about where should someone start, where the beginning is in obtaining, learning how to use, and which size plane is a good starting point. Now this plane here, this is a number 3, Stanley Bailey, made about either just before or just after World War II. Now as you can see, my size hand, this plane is kind of small. Even the number 4, for me, I can get 3 fingers in there, index finger out, and I can use it. It's just not very comfortable. So for me, it's always been about the jack plane, the number 5. I still hold it the same way because basically the handle's almost the same. But for me, I always felt much more comfortable with a number 5 jack plane. I could do everything the number 4 could do and a little bit more. Partly because of the amount of toe. That's a lot more real estate to make contact than this. But here again, so you say you want to get into woodworking. Well, what are you making? Making moldings, tabletops, or birdhouses. If all you're going to do is birdhouses, then a little block plane is really all you need. You know, if you're doing doll houses, boat models, you know, all small stuff, a little block plane will get you there. The only thing that's different about a block plane is you look at the amount of toe versus, well, I shouldn't call it toe. This is the toe, this is the heel, this is just the area in front of the blade, the area behind the blade. But when you look at, you know, a jack plane, you're going to be able to joint some longer pieces with that. You really going to have a hard time jointing long pieces with a block plane. So I thought this would be a great time to show you about the only tool that I have from when I was a teenager. It was the first plane given to me by a retired carpenter in New York City. It's nothing fancy. It is, from what I can tell, it is a Fulton, because it says Fulton number 262. Right there, it says Fulton. And it has a Merit Tools blade in it. If this plane could talk, the amount of work that it's done, I don't even remember the last time I sharpened this. I'm trying to find the family of the man who gave this to me to see if I can't return it, so that maybe somebody in their family could have a remembrance of the man. But it was my go-to, my jack plane. I did everything with this plane. That was my only plane for many, many years, other than a block plane. It's been years since I've had this out. Let's see if we can get it to cut. And this traveled with me all around the country. I've tried flattening it several times, and it deserves the retirement that it's in, but there you go. So it's a little bit lighter in weight. The casting is thinner. But that plane has been with me my entire life, and it's been set aside a few times. You can see there's rust on the toe here, and that was from a metal toolbox. I used to have a metal toolbox I'd take on job sites. So what I used to do is I'd prop it up in the back with just a sliver of wood, and the toe rested on the metal toolbox. And the problem with metal toolboxes is temperature and humidity changes. You'll get condensation in them, and that's where you get rust. But so back to the question, where do you begin? Where does a new woodworker begin? When you have big mitts, I would say automatically go for a jack plane. If your hands are more petite, then you can reach for a number 3. I love the way that one's set up right now. That one is set up absolutely perfect. And when you compare the way this is set up, it still has about a 1/16 of an inch exposed. But I've got my chip breaker coming right down, and I honed the front of the chip breaker ever so slightly. I just love the way this one is set up right now. So you have to ask yourself the question, where do I start? Am I looking to build houses or birdhouses? And that's where the decision comes. So how do you know what tool to buy? Do I look for an old vintage plane, or do I buy new? Well, I would say the first thing to do is not buy anything. Find somebody, and I'll just use the comparison, like me, in your neighborhood, in your region, who already has tools, might have extra tools, but they have the knowledge of how to use them, how to set them up. Then spend time with that person. It can be an hour or 2 a week, and they will guide you. They are more than willing to guide you through which is the correct tool to buy and how to get it working. But these are my three recommendations. If you can afford 3 planes, you need a low angle, not a standard, a low angle block plane. You need some sort of smoother. It can be a number 3 if your hands are a little smaller. It can be a number 4. I really like the number 3 for certain jobs. It's only a 1/4 inch narrower, and it's about a 1/2 inch or so shorter, but it is lighter. And then a jack plane. You can joint the wood for a full-size house door with a jack plane. You can make 10-foot dining room tables. I mean, look at this. This plane has been around a long time. It did all the work that old timer I got it from, which is now a lifetime ago. It did everything he wanted it to. and then it did everything I asked it to. Is it perfect? No. Like I said, we've got pitting on the front here, but if you look at the back of the heel, you can see where even the original manufacturing, this back corner is not flat. All right, but the sole is thin. It's real thin, and so I'm not going to mess with it. If I wanted to, and that sole was thicker, I might have it reground because I believe it's thicker on this side than this side. But I'm not going to. This plane has deserved its retirement, and if I can ever find the family, the name of the family was Denninger, out of Queens, New York. I was dating a girl by the name of Terry, and her grandfather found out I was a carpenter's apprentice, and he said, "Son, you're going to need this plane." And he gave me this plane. This was his. His initials are right on the blade. So perhaps one day I'll have that situation where I'll meet somebody and I'll say, "Son, you're going to need this tool," and I'll give him one of mine. But for right now, I want to share what I can knowledge base wise with you. Now, so you're just starting out. The block plane is usually people's first purchase because you can use it. Let's say you're working in a machine shop, woodworking facility, and you've just ripped this piece of wood. So this piece of wood has got saw marks on it. Now you can go to a power jointer, but that's going to leave joiner mill marks. So if it's a surface that's going to be seen, all you need is a block plane to just come along and clean all of that off. There you go. All right? So a block plane is usually everybody's first purchase, even if they don't get into hand tool woodworking. If you can find a model 60.5 Stanley in good shape, low angle, and even if you have to buy a brand new blade, hock replacement blade, if you can find one of those for with a replacement blade under $50, $60 maybe, clean it up a little bit, you'll be good to go. You will be good to go. If, however, you can't, you will want to consider some other modern day maker. This is a Lie-Nielsen. It could very well be a Wood River. It could be a Veritas. It could be any brand you want. But the block plane is usually everybody's first plane. You can take that real sharp edge off the corners. Now, if you're going to buy, let's set this aside. If you're going to buy some vintage tools, and I've already pointed out a couple of downsides of this jack plane. I mean, it's got a broken handle that I glued back together with, I'm thinking it was still just Type-On back then. I didn't have super glue. They're not rosewood handles. They look like they're maple or beech. Nothing special for the blade. It's a thin blade. But if you're going to buy an old tool, you want to try to find something that's not going to drive you crazy. The knob is at least intact. The tote is at least intact. Can have chips on it, can have dings and scratches. Your body is not a bucket of rust. All right? Something that you can take just a little bit of Scotch-Brite, a little bit of penetrating oil, and just clean the gunk off of it. And as far as the blade is concerned, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I could have a blade that's totally worn out. Okay, it's been sharpened all the way back to here. And that doesn't bother me as much as someone who's mistreated the chip breaker or the cap iron. That's an integral part of your plane. The blade is replaceable. So when you're looking to buy a new plane, you want to make sure that nothing is broken. No chips, no cracks. The frog itself is okay. The lateral moves freely. This one's a little stiff, but it moves freely. And all the parts are there. Okay? You can put a little dab of oil in a few locations. You can go back to my 4.5 smoother video and check what I took it completely apart. But if the plane is intact and everything's good, you sharpen the blade, you put it back in, and you give it a test run. If it makes a cut, I don't care what kind of cut, it makes a cut. Then that's where you start. To fine-tune that cut will take time to learn why it works or why it does what it does. But at least you'd have a plane to get started. So, the first plane is your block plane. Normally, people's second plane is a smoother, because in today's world, through automation and power tools, almost everything's coming out of table saws, power planers, power jointers. So a lot of people, all they want to do is take that final smoothing pass on surfaces and edges. But if you're going to get into actually creating straight edges where you're not using a power jointer, then you need a jack plane. But as I mentioned, for me, the jack plane was always my favorite tool. So I don't know if this helped as a primer, or as I said years ago, as a primer, the English language, a primer on hand tools. But this old plane is pretty much a long way from not being able to do its job. But I wanted to retire it a few years ago, and I did. Out of respect for the tool and out of respect for the man who gave it to me, I found this one and put this one into service. Looks like this one might need a touch-up on the blade. Well, I hope it helped. You want to get into woodworking, you're going to need a hand plane. Which one? Start with a block plane. Learn how to use it, learn how to sharpen it, learn how to set it up. Then you have a smoother. That'll do larger surfaces, smooth it out like glass. And then if you're doing really big work, you can actually use the jack as a smoother, but it can also do jointing. Hope that helps. Go make some shavings. Walter out.